Alright, this is William from PrimerPodcast.com,
This is Davis.
and welcome to part 6 of Project Nickle and Dime. But before we get talking about what we're going to do today, let's take a look to see what Davis got done during the week.
Alright, back to Project Nickle and Dime. I'm going to do the rear brake installation today. Basically just a rear drum, 10-inch drum. It's a factory size for a 4 to 8-inch. And we'll go from there. Alright, for replacement parts I'm going with the O'Reilly Specials. This is your standard brake shoe. I believe this is a 2-inch. And hardware kit, I'm using the Brake Best. Comes with all your retracting springs and your fold down springs. And also brand new levers, or not levers, cables. You'll need that. And I'm going to use the extensions for the wheel cylinders. And obviously the new brackets that I cleaned up. Old brackets that I cleaned up. And our brand new 10-inch drum. So I'll be using that. And special tools you need for broom brakes is this guy. Pushes in the springs this way, and this guy actually allows you to slip on the springs onto the pivot pin. Best investment you can make. Alright, another good thing for reference is shop manual. Best investment you can ever make. So what you want to do, Chapter 2, let's go to the orientation for the wheels, or the brakes. Right there. Best thing for you. Let's get started. Alright, first thing I'm going to do is put a very thin coating of a little bit of grease on the wheel cylinder end links. That's what these are. So it'll help prevent rust. Obviously it's already starting, but I want to be able to reuse these. Shouldn't be a problem. And these go in here in this orientation on both sides, and these will engage the brake shoes. So that's first. Alright, now I'm going to hook up the emergency brake cable lever to the end of the cable here. Going to hook that up. Then I'll mount the secondary shoe, and then I'll mount the primary shoe. Another thing to be aware of is when you install the brake shoes, the back side on the backing plate here, right here, and down here, you have to apply some grease. And what I'm going to use is some disc brake high temp grease here, and just put a little dab on your finger and put it on right here, because eventually what will happen is you'll start to wear a groove, and then when the groove wears through, you'll put a hole in it, and then that'll hang up your brake shoe. So when your brake shoe tries to work, it starts to hang up, and then you'll get uneven wear and uneven braking. So it's important to put a little bit of grease on these tabs on the front and the back. Okay, next up, what I need to do is once I get the brake shoe up here, I got it twisted. The orientation goes this way. Then the retainer pin comes through the back. Then you're going to follow up with this spring once the shoe goes on, and you'll use this little guy to actually hold it and lock it in place. That's where this tool comes in. And if you're good, it goes right on. Alright, here's a tech tip for you to hold this brake shoe, since having a third hand seems to help while you're trying to get that spring on there. Always a party because it wants to move. I'm going to use one of these guys, my quick grip, clamp this brake shoe in place, and then put some pressure right here, get that on there. Let's try it out. Alright, I'm going to try the quick grip in this orientation because the pin seems to be the straightest at this point. And I have the extension here locked in and the top set up for the anchor pin at the top. So we'll give this a try. Well, that seemed to work. So I pushed that on, got that on nice and straight. Then once you get, I don't know if this is going to be in focus, once you get that peg through there, you have to turn it 90 degrees from the opening so it stays locked in. So I have the top lined up, the wheel cylinder extensions hooked up, the spring in, I've got the emergency brake cable hooked up. This is actually the secondary shoe, which is longer than the primary shoe, which is going to be in the front. So that's set. Now we'll hook up the other side. Now I'm going to clamp the primary shoe here that faces the front. And again, I'm going to mount that pin from the back through this hole right here, right there, with another spring and retaining cup. Alright, so I had to move the clamp, obviously, to get that magic to happen right here and make sure that pin is turned 90 degrees from the opening on both sides. You don't want to put your face directly in front of it when you're looking at it, because if it slips off, you're going to get it right in the eye. So what's next is the cable. Cable goes here and down here, but I have to do a check here because I have a feeling I have the wrong part number for this clip. And that guy's right down here. And this end hooks right there. And in between that, you put this little guy in, like that. That locks in there. But I have a feeling it's too long, so I have to go check that out online real quick. And here's something that's important. The star wheels, they look the same for both sides, the right and the left, but they're not. They're threaded differently. And on the end, you'll see where it says an R for the right side, and obviously that will be an L for the left side. And this is the little cap that goes over it. It engages the brake shoe ends down here and over here. So you have to make sure that you have those set just right. Otherwise it'll start to back off when you're braking, and you don't want that. So basically just expand out the brake shoes to get this bracket in here, your equalizer bracket, or the parking brake link. So once I get these all tightened up, it'll obviously tighten up and put tension across from shoe to shoe, and then we can put springs on. Alright, this is a general orientation for the springs. This one's going to hook up here, go to that anchor pin in the center. This is the cable. The adjuster cable is going to go around this directional bracket here and hook up to the adjusting plate down here. This spring hooks into the top of the adjuster here, but my brake cable from O'Reilly is 1.25 inches too long. It should be 10 1/8, and this thing's 11 1/2. So I get to make another trip to Napa to get the right part. These things, a pair of these cost $3, so I got to make a special trip. So fun times. Well, you can obviously see the difference from 11 1/4 inches there to the proper 10 1/8 at the bottom. So thank you, Napa, for getting me the correct part. An extra $3 and an extra trip to the auto parts store. Thanks. Okay, now the trick to getting this cable on is to get that behind this wheel right here, keep that from falling out, and then it has to hook right in here. So what I'm going to do is use a block of wood to hold that little piece that just fell out, again with my quick grip clamp and try to do that way. You know, when you get this cable in here, you want to make sure you don't get the cable behind the cable guide here and have it wedged between the brake shoe and the guide. You have to be right on the groove on the guide. It's always the trick part. Alright, so I managed to get that spring hooked on there with a pair of vice grips. I collapsed the two brake shoes, took out the adjusting star there. Get those two as close as possible so you don't have to pull as hard. Now I'll do this spring and then I'll do the opposite side, and then I should be able to take the block of wood off. Well, I got that spring on, bottom spring, the adjuster wheel, I still have to put that in, but now my cable guide has slipped off, so I gotta move that now. Alright, I got back spring on, the cable guide's now in, but my cable snapped off, so I'm going to attempt to pull that with a pair of vice grips and hook it right there on the eyelet again. Alright, I finally got it. Cable guide to the upper eyelet here. You have to pull this back. You still have to make sure it's engaged in that bottom hole. Now I have to put the star adjuster in there. Alright, now I got the star adjuster wheel in there. You have to push the two brake shoes out a little bit. You get that situated. You make sure it's all the way in. And now what you do, well, you take the lug nuts off and you put the brake drum on. You turn it and you adjust the wheel till where it just starts to grab the drum. Alright, I've got the drum on and I've got some resistance all the way around now. It just seems to be pretty even. That's what you're going to do. You're going to use like a screwdriver, and on the back side of the backing plate there's a little slot, and you're supposed to engage that star wheel, and you're going to back it off 3/4 of a turn per factory specs. So I'll back that off, and I should have just enough play in it so when the fluid comes through the wheel cylinder, it'll expand the brake shoe and apply an even amount of force to both sides of the axle. So that's what I'll do. Once I get that set, I'll put in the little rubber plug, and then you do the same thing for the other side, and hopefully I'll get a little bit better practice at it. So that's it for right now. Alright, some other odds and ends for Project Nickel and Dime. When you convert a 6-cylinder to a V8, you're going to have to change the accelerator rod. Carburetor would be in this orientation. The V8, I've got this all backwards now, don't I? The V8 version is like this, so I gotta swap these out. Alright, on the inside, you're gonna take the flat spring out from behind the accelerator pedal, and then you're gonna get to a Phillips screw, which is right there. Take that out, and then you can take the whole rod assembly out through the firewall. And of course, the V8 bracket doesn't use the same holes as a 6-cylinder, which is top and bottom. So the factory did leave dimples here, though, where the top two, and I'm utilizing the existing hole down here at the bottom, even though it wasn't in use. So that'll line up, and then the orientation's correct on the inside. I did check that. So drill those out, use the sheet metal screws that came off the old bracket, and we'll be set. Well, turns out these dimples are holes. They're already drilled out. It's just full of dirt. So, well, it saves me the hassle of drilling them. Cool. So, next up I also have to rework the fuel line. Then a V8, scan pull back. V8 it goes underneath the frame rail, goes inside the wheel well area, comes out over here, and my fuel pump will be right about here. So I want to reroute that so because you don't have fuel line next to an exhaust manifold, or in my case a header, which will dump out right here. So I gotta do some tube bending. Now's a good time to get rid of the cheesy battery tray. So I got one of those. Let's swap it out. Well, I got the old battery tray out, but I want to clean this area up before I put the new one back in. Hit it with some paint, but definitely scrub it, so I'll have to wait.
Alright, man, how long did that take you?
Probably about an hour or two, maybe 3 hours.
Including a trip to Napa?
One trip back, yeah. O'Reilly let me down, so I had to go to Napa. So what are you gonna do? I mean, it was inevitable, sort of. But once I got to the driver's side of the rear brakes, it went pretty quick. So.
Sweet. So what's on tap for today?
Today we're going to be bleeding the master cylinder, stainless steel brake, front disc brake conversion kit, and then we will bleed the entire system. I did get a big jug of .3 brake fluid this morning, so we'll get busy with the pickle jar and some tubing, and hopefully the whole system will be plumbed and ready to go.
And then we'll be done with this part of
the install. Yeah. Well, you know, you got to touch everything. So. All new and clean.
Time and money.
Time and money.
Let's get to work.
My money.
So why do we need to bench bleed the master cylinder?
Okay, you need to get all the air out of the master cylinder, which is going to be the piston assembly, which is down below the reservoirs. You have to get all that air out of there. So basically what you do is you put fluid in, and then you'll loop 2 lines or 2 hoses from the outlets back into the top, and you'll push the piston and you'll force all the air out of it so that basically all the bubbles come out, and then when the piston retracts it pulls fluid back in it. So essentially you're just recycling and getting all the air out. And then once you get this filled up, I'll put the cap back on it, lock it down, take the hoses off, and then go out and install it on the booster, in my case, or your firewall. And when you put something over the top, and it's kind of like a straw, you put your thumb over it and you pull it out, you still hold fluid in it, and then you let go, fluid will come out. That's why I keep the lid on tight, so I can take it out there and I won't piss fluid out all over the place. That's the general idea. Just enough time to get me started and hook these 2 up, and then I can flush the entire system, and then keep an eye on the reservoirs as we're doing it, because it obviously will go down as we get to the rear, especially the rear brakes. So. Great. So what you're going to do is you're going to use what I use is like a rounded end, in this case a ratchet, and you're going to push on the end of the piston here, and you're going to force air out of the bottom assembly. That's it, no more air bubbles.
Okay, so the process of bleeding out your brake system, now that we've got the master on and bled.
You're going to jump inside the car. I'm going to get to the furthest wheel cylinder on the car, which is going to be the passenger side rear. I'm going to ask you to slowly push down on the brake pedal. I will open up the bleeder screw on the back of the wheel cylinder, and I will have some rubber tube or rubber hose connected to it. It goes into my pickle jar, which has fluid in it.
So that way air doesn't get sucked back up.
Air doesn't get sucked back up, but you can also see air bubbles come out, and when the air bubbles stop coming out, you know that you can jump over to the opposite wheel cylinder, which will be on the driver's side rear. And then we'll go front passenger side and then front driver's side, which is closest to the master cylinder, and then you eliminate all the air.
And it's just a process that you got to work between us. One guy calls, push down, it's open.
Yeah.
You'll get your system going.
There's other ways of doing it. You can use a hand pump kit if you're by yourself, or you can do the gravity method, but I've always had better success with having just
this works.
Yeah.
This is what we're used to. This is what
people.
works.
This just seems to work. So that's what we're gonna do. That's the process. So let's do it.
Okay, so there's the basic setup.
Just rubber hose. In my case, a plastic pickle jar, Colossins, whatever you prefer, jam jar, and it's going to be hooked up to the top outlet orifice of the bleeder screw on the top, and then you're going to use my semi-customized flare nut wrench.
Okay, I'm down. Now what Davis is doing is opening up that bleeder screw. Bubbles should be coming out.
Yep.
And then when he closes it, he's going to tell me it's okay to bring the pedal back up.
Lift it up.
And it's up.
And pump it.
Down. And you keep going until there's no more bubbles.
Pump it.
Okay, up,
Oh, sorry.
down.
You lit it up.
Up. Make sure to check the fluid after each bleed.
Now, front disc brakes, the bleeder screw is way over here on the outboard side of the caliper. So to get to it, you have to take front wheel off, and it'll be right in front of you up on top. So now we get to put the new wheels on the rear end. Drop the rear end. At least lift each side on the front, and we can bleed those. So.
But those rear tires were going on today anyways.
Yeah, but it wasn't quite my plan.
Right.
Sign of a cheap jack.
There's the bleeder screw.
Right where you can get to it, way up over on the inside, but take the wheel off. Done. Well, we got this off. I'll tape this off and paint this guy, because that's not good.
And when you're actually bleeding, you want to make sure this cover at least is loosely on, because otherwise the bubbles and stuff kind of get all over the place and kind of makes a mess down there. And never ever reuse this stuff. So we finish up at the driver's side front, because that's closest to the master cylinder. Top off your fluids.
Yep.
And
Lock
put the
down
cover up.
Lock down the cap.
All right, car's got brakes.
Amen, man. We did it in what, an hour and a half?
Yep, not too bad. Make sure that you have enough fluid on hand.
Oh yeah.
You will be surprised how much it takes by the time you get to the end over there.
Yep, 4 times, plus the length of a car, times 4. And if you have unexpected leaks,
A little bit
there's
more
a little
fluid.
bit more down on the ground. So.
And also, you're not going to get any brake pedal till you get to that last cylinder when it's finally starting to build up pressure. So just keep going at the other, do the other 3. Make sure all the bubbles are gone. That last one, you'll start feeling the pressure.
the distance starts shrinking and you start having more resistance. So I'm actually surprised we pulled it off in a small amount of time.
Yep. So
Amen.
thanks for watching. Next up is going to be cleaning out the engine compartment and start looking at engine and transmission stuff.
Yeah, good times. Cheap stuff.
Right on.